Hello friends, welcome back to my channel. Well, as promised, today we're going to start the MODA Modern Building Blocks quilt. This is a kit that I purchased from Quilting. It's something that MODA sold years ago as a boxed kit, and kind of resurrected it out of their vault, for lack of a better term. It uses all the Bella solids, and the quilt finishes at 84 by 96, so it's going to make a really good size quilt. It'll be perfect for a bed. We're going to start with this block right here in the center. That's block number 1, and next week will be this block here, block number 2. Now, as we go along, I'm going to post a schedule in my community tab of my channel, and I'll put a link down below to the community tab in case you don't know where to find it, and you could just click that and take you over to the tab. In the next few days, I'll put up a complete schedule of which blocks we're sewing which week. Some weeks we'll do one, so some weeks we'll do more than one. Obviously, I'll take a break for Thanksgiving, and for Christmas, I actually might sew the day after Thanksgiving, that Friday, but Christmas week, I'll take a break. I'm not sure how long it's going to take. I'm going to have to look at the schedule still and see, but I'm definitely not going to only do just one block a week because it would take forever since there's 48 blocks. So I will put up a schedule there, and if you want to follow with me, you can. If you want to do it on your own time, you can. But several of you who purchased this from Quilting saw that I had purchased it as well and had asked me if I would mind doing it on my channel. And I always love, doing things here because sewing with friends is so much better than sewing alone. So I hope you enjoy this and you'll sew along with me. If you're interested in grabbing this, head on over to Sew Yeah. Again, I will link that down below. I would love to see you sew along with me. I think this is going to be a really fun quilt. I don't do a lot of quilts with just solids, but I love anything MODA. As you can see, I've got the MODA Blockheads 5 blocks on the wall behind me, so I really enjoy doing their sew-alongs. So I don't think this is going to be any exception. So like I said, you'll need your pattern, which includes this little pattern book with all the blocks from Quilting. I think there's a couple places that still sell the patterns online. If you want to go searching for modern building blocks, if you want to use fabric from your stash and you just need the patterns are not published anywhere though, so I'm not going to give out any of the sizes when I sew these. You'll have to grab the patterns from somewhere, whether that's Quilting or somewhere else, but they do have the full kit, and it's a really, really reasonable cost for the patterns and for the fabric, because we got a big stack of fabric to go with this, and so I thought it was a great price. All right, well, enough about that. And I'm gonna get all my fabrics gathered up here and we'll start sewing. So here is week 1's block. It's a 36-inch finished block, so it should be 36.5 once we get done with it. So it's gonna make a really big block. So the first part we're gonna do is this inside part here. We're gonna have basically a square and a square, and we're just gonna kind of build around that. And then we're going to put that square in a square, and then that square is going to get star legs to make it a star shape. So let's start with the square in a square. So I'm going to set that aside. I'm going to start with this one here, and then we're going to add these red triangles to either side, and then to the top and bottom. So the first thing I like to do when I do in a square to square is I like to find the center of my square, and I kind of score it a little bit. Just fold it. Okay, and then I'm going to fold my triangles as well and find the center of them, and I'm going to score those. So now when I go to sew this, I know where the center of my triangle is and I know where the center of my square is, and I'm going to lay that right on top of where I scored it, and I'm going to sew down here. I'm going to go ahead and do the same for the opposite side. Okay, scored that one, and it's going to lay really nicely on the mark I made over here. So I'm going to go ahead and sew both of these, then we'll press them, and then we'll add the other two sides. Now, a lot of people do square in the square where they add one side at a time, kind of clockwise or whatever, but I like to do it this way because I can get both pieces on, sew them, press them, and then do the other two sides. So I'm going to start with those. Okay, so that's done. I'm gonna go ahead and press these. I like to finger press everything first, just to make it go the way I want it to. Then add some of my pressing solution. And then I'm gonna grab my iron. And give this guy a press. The pressing solution that I have is called Acorn Easy Press Piecing, Precision Piecing Solution. It just helps like these lay your seams down really nice and flat. There's no bulk at all. As you can see, it's flat as a pancake, so that's why I really like that. So I use that all the time. Okay, so now I'm basically gonna do the same thing on the other two sides that I just did. So I'm gonna find the center again of this block, which is a little more difficult after the first two sides are sewn, but I can find it. I'm gonna score that. And I'm not gonna worry about cutting these dog ears off right now. I'll do that once everything's done. Okay, score that. And now I'm gonna do the triangles just like before. This is my favorite way of doing a square and a square if I'm not using the paper that they have. They actually make a product that's a square and a square, kind of like foundation paper piecing. I find this way helps it to be the most precise as far as them sitting where they should. Okay, I'm gonna go sew those. Okay, so this is what we've got so far, and the only thing that I can see so far that I don't like about this sew along is that along the way it does not tell us what each piece should measure. So we're gonna hope that we sewed all this correctly so that this turns out right. Because usually there's measurements to trim down a square and a square too. So we're gonna hope that we did this right. So now I'm going to grab my rotary cutter and my ruler. And I'm going to cut off these little dog ears. This looks like it might... I think this block is supposed to be about 6.5 inches because it's looking like that's what's fitting on my ruler. So we're going to hope that I'm right. So that's what I'm going to measure it to. Trim off all that stuff. And then do the other side. Okay. So hopefully that is correct because it looked like it was just fitting that 6.5 inch thing. So, okay. So I'm going to set that aside for a minute. And the next thing we're going to need to do is we're going to need to make some flying geese and some half square triangle units that are going to go around that square and a square. So we're going to make these pieces and we're going to make 4 of these. I'm going to set that aside and grab my, let me shut that, grab my rectangle, grab those pieces there, not my rectangle, my triangle, my larger triangle, and then I've got a smaller triangle and another red, which is, this is going to make our half square triangle. So you're going to make 4 of these guys and 4 of these guys. So I'm going to go ahead and do both of those now. So there's my half square triangle. Still need to press it. I'm going to go ahead and put one wing on this flying geese, and then we'll press that and this at the same time, and then come back and add the last piece. So I'm just going to line this triangle up with the bottom of the background rectangle. I keep calling it a rectangle. Background triangle. Now be careful with these, especially if you don't use best press or acorn or starch on your fabric ahead of time. Make sure that you don't stretch out these fabrics. They are on the bias, these triangles, because they're cut in half from squares. So be super careful about that. I did use some best press on mine, so they're kind of stiff, not super stiff, but enough where they're not gonna come out of shape, I don't think, as long as I don't mess with them too much. And there's definitely no requirement to use starch or best press or anything like that, but just be careful if you're not, because you could get some wonky flying geese, especially since they're not really giving us sizes in these directions of what these pieces are supposed to be before we add them to the block. So that's kind of interesting. I don't think I've ever seen a sew along without some of those things, at least. But that's all right. We'll figure it out together. Okay. So on this half square triangle, I'm just going to trim off these dog ears. I'm going to do the same thing on this flying geese, and then I'm going to add the other half of this other piece of red onto the other side. Okay, so let me grab, I'm just going to use my scissors and snip these off. You can use a rotary cutter if you want to, if you're more comfortable, that's fine. Get rid of those. Alright, so now I've got my half square triangle. I'm going to finish this, and you're going to need, like I said, 4 of those and 4 of the flying geese. Okay, so there's the other side. Finger press that guy. Use my pressing solution. And I'm going to give this guy a press. Alright, now I'm just going to trim off this little dog ear here and down here. I'm just going to snip it with my scissors. And The flying geese came out to 6.5 inches, and they're going around that square and a square. So yeah, the square and the square should measure up to 6.5 inches. So, all right. So now what I'm going to do, grab all my pieces over here. What you want to do next is you want to take one of your flying geese, or two of them actually, and add your half square triangles to either side. So I already did that with one, and I started it with one here, and I'm going to put the last one on here. Now you want the background fabric to touch the red here. So the red should be on the outside, or all your points should be kind of going the same way. Okay, press this guy out. And these flying geese, or these not flying geese, the half square triangles should be 3.5 inches. That's another thing it doesn't state in the pattern, but 3.5 inches for those. So 3.5 by 6.5, 3.5 inches. Your center square and a square should be 6.5 inches. Okay, that's pressed. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my square and a square here. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to add one of these, actually, I'm sorry, goes in like this. We're going to add these to each side. And after we add that, we're going to add these pieces here. So hopefully you can see that in my camera. This is what the center of the block is going to look like. And don't forget, this is going to be a really big block, 36.5 inches unfinished. So eventually you're not going to be able to see very well in the camera, but I will do my best to show you the pieces. Okay, I'm going to start with these center ones. And you might want to sew with the square and the square on top. That way you don't cut off your point here. You can see where the threads cross, and stitch one thread to the outside of where that X is, and then you won't lose your point. Okay, that's one side. Do the other. This is definitely not a hard block, but definitely lots of steps to finish this. Okay, so there's the block so far. I'm going to go ahead and press this, and then we'll add the other two pieces. All right. So those are pressed. Now I'm just going to add these top and bottom pieces, and we'll have the center red part of our block done. Okay, there's that one. Oop. And now the other side. Again, I'm sewing these with the square and the square up so I can see where those points are. Okay, just gonna fix this. I had some stitches that didn't come out right there. I think my machine is ready for a new needle, and that's okay. Just want to make sure it got sewed. If you ever get skip stitches, it might be time for a new needle on your machine. And that's when I got a little bit of a skip stitch there, so I'm gonna replace my needle. All right, so that's the block so far. I'm gonna go ahead and stop and replace my needle and come back, and we'll add the sides to this guy here, which will be these blue pieces. Now, this is gonna be done just like we did the center square. I'm gonna fold them, and we're gonna find the centers on all four sides, and we're gonna make a larger square and a square. So we'll do that in just a minute. I'm gonna change my needle and come back and we'll sew some more. Okay, one thing I forgot to mention before when I finished this middle piece is that this should be about 12.5 inches square, I believe. It makes sense to me from looking at the instructions. They're pretty vague, like I said. They don't have any sizes, but I think this should be 12.5, and I think after we add these sides, this whole thing is going to be 18.5 inches square. So I went ahead and added two sides, and again, I did it just the same way I did this square and the square in the center. I found the center, I scored it, and I scored the triangles as well. I did it to try out my needle after I switched my needle. Everything's good. So now I'm going to do the same thing for the other two sides. Find the centers. Now we're just making a really big square and a square. Okay, those are done. I'm going to score my triangles. Lay that one on there, and the same thing for the other side. This is a really big block. Don't make 36-inch blocks too often. Okay, so go ahead and sew this one on and then this one on, and we'll press these. And hopefully, if I did it right, it's 18.5 inches square. And my machine is sounding a lot better. I changed the needle, and it was actually good timing because I was nearly out of bobbin as well, so I refreshed my bobbin. And I have a mechanical machine, so I went ahead and dusted her off a bit and put some oil in her, and now she's running real well. So don't forget to do some maintenance on your machine. I sew a lot, so I try to clean her at least once a week and change the needle every couple of days. You don't need to do it that much if you don't sew as much as I do. But it's a good habit to get into, to clean your machine regularly. Just get all the dust out, look in the bobbin area, kind of get the dust out. And if you ever see your machine start skipping stitches, more than likely you need to change your needle, which is what I needed to do. And now she's back to normal. And I also realized that I had not changed my stitch length. I was doing some foundation paper piecing. And if you do foundation paper piecing, you know that you have to lower your stitch length quite a bit. And I realized that my stitches were still on that too, causing really teeny tiny stitches. So if I end up getting to the point where I need jack, that would have been really hard to rip out. So I lengthened my stitch length back again too. Alright, so now I'm just going to go ahead and press these. And we'll cut off these little pieces here in a bit. Okay, flip that over to the other side. Oops. I really like these colors. This is going to be a pretty block. Very nautical colors this time. Alright. So, I can't even fit the whole block on camera. As you can see, it's a really big, huge block. I'm going to cut these guys off all the way around. And then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to grab our background, I guess not really background, but the lightest blue that we have, triangles, and the kind of tealy, darker blue that we have to make the flying geese. So the next thing we're going to do is make these big, huge flying geese. So I'm going to trim this, set this aside, and then we'll start with the flying geese. Okay, so as you can see here, I've got my large triangle, my pieces that are going to make this flying geese, these large, kind of teal green. There's three sort of different blues in this. There's this light blue, the blue that we used to surround the square and the square, and then this teal-y blue. So, three different blues in this. I think they made this block for me. They knew I like blues. Not really, I'm just kidding, but it's fun. Alright, so I'm going to pin this a little bit. I'm not typically a pinner, but because these are so big, I want to make sure that it stays where it's supposed to be, so we get this nice flying geese unit. Now you're going to make 4 of these, and then after you've made all 4, you're going to take 2 of them and you're going to add the last squares. There's some squares, I think they're 9.5 inches squares of this color are going to go on the ends of 2 of the flying geese. And that's the last bit of this block that we have to do. So it's not a hard block, but definitely lots of steps in this block because it's such a big block. And I did measure the inside of this star block that I had, and it came out to 18.5 inches. So yay, we did something right. And these pieces that we're adding should be what makes it the 36.5 inches. So, all right, there's that one. Press this guy. And don't forget to make 4 of this. And be really careful, like I said before, if you don't start your best press. These are definitely on the bias and they will get stretchy if you're not careful. So, and they can still stretch even if you use starch or best press. So just, it does help a bit to make it more stable. Okay, I'm going to take my time to line that up. And I'm going to pin this one too before I move it. And I'm allergic to pinning, so those of you who have been following me, write this one down in the book. I'm pinning. Oh, see, that already moved a little bit. That's why I want to pin. There we go. Okay, I'm going to sew that. And then just a couple more steps and we'll have this block done. Okay, so I'm going to give this a press, and then I'm going to take 2 of these and add the outside squares to them. So I've already done that with one, so I can show you here. Here's the flying geese. Again, this block is huge, so it's not all going to fit in the camera, but here's the flying geese in it, and then I've added the squares to the outside left and right. So I'm going to do that to another one of these. So I'm going to press this and we're going to finish, I'm going to finish that, and then we'll come back and assemble the whole block and we're going to be done. Okay, I've sewn the flying geese without the end pieces onto each side of this block. Hopefully you guys can see that. I know, like, it's really hard to see because this block is so huge. And now I'm going to go ahead and grab these last 2 pieces that have the squares on either end and add them to the top and bottom of this block. And again, I'm going to sew with the flying geese side down so I can cross right through where those threads make the X just on the outside of it so I don't lose my point. Okay, I'm going to do that, and then I will come back and I will show you my block completely finished because there's no way it's going to fit in this little space. Well, thank you so much for sewing along with me today and asking me to sew this right here on my channel. I'm going to show you my final finished block. It's practically a quilt itself. If you need a baby quilt, this would be a good block to do. Just throw some borders on it and you'll be done. Mine did measure 36.5 inches, so yay! I'm happy about that. It should be 36.5 before we put it in the quilt, 36 when it's done. I don't even know if I can show you the whole thing. It's so big. But here it is, all done. Beautiful star. I love stars, so I'm cool with that. Anyway, so that is our first block. It's massive. You could actually call it a quilt, not a block. And our block next week is also another 36-inch block. So if you didn't finish yours today, go ahead and finish it over the next week, and then we will start the second block, which is this big monster down here. We'll start that next Thursday. I'm gonna try to get the video up a little bit earlier. I know it's up a little bit late today. I had kind of a rough day, but I'm gonna be more on it next week, and I'm gonna have it ready to go and get it up earlier in the day. And then also look in my community tab in the next day or so. I'm going to try to get up a schedule of which blocks we're doing which weeks. I'm going to go in order of the blocks in the booklet, but I'm going to combine a few of the smaller blocks into the same week. So this project doesn't drag on for a year or year and a half, because even though we're doing this weekly, there's 48 blocks, and that's a year, basically 52 weeks in a year's worth. And I know that me personally, I get bored with a project if it takes too long. So some of the weeks we're going to do some of the smaller blocks. There's a bunch of 6-inch blocks in here. We'll do several on those weeks. So I'll get that schedule up as soon as possible, so all of you sewing along will know when we're doing those and when to prepare those fabrics. I'm kind of preparing them as I go, because it's a huge pile of fabrics. If you got the kit, you know, and if you haven't got the kit yet and you want to sew this, you can head on over to So Yeah Quilting and pick it up. But you'll see when you get it. The kit it's huge. So I did not have the time or the energy to iron yards and yards of fabric. So I'm kind of cutting each week as I go. So that's why I'm going to put the schedule up as well, so you guys can get your fabrics for that week ironed and prepped. All right, well, thanks so much for joining me again. If you are interested in the MODA blockheads, 5 blocks that are on the wall behind me, I will also link that down below, because there's always somebody who asks, so I'll go ahead and do that. Both of these are MODA projects. I love MODA fabrics and I love MODA projects, so I'm happy to be here and sewing this along with you guys. So if you're sewing along with me, I'd love for you to leave me a comment down below and say, hey, yeah, I'm sewing along with you. Or if you're just here visiting, say hi. I love seeing you guys. And I will see you really soon, hopefully this Saturday live for Saturdays with Steph live at 5. We're going to be sewing up the Carnival Puzzle Mystery Quilt. All right, guys, take care. Have a wonderful rest of your week and a beautiful weekend. Bye.